Welcome to the newest edition of the Pump Fake, everybody. Jarrett Bailey with you as always. Joined today, he is 1/3 of the Around the NFL podcast and one half of the Justin and Rosenthal Vanity Project, JRVP. It's Gregg Rosenthal. Hey, I'm a fan of the show, buddy.
I was not ready for that. I was not prepared, and I appreciate it. Always happy to get a plug for JRVP, and surprised anyone listens to it.
As a stand-up junkie and as somebody who appreciates dark humor and appreciates the comedy of Anthony Jeselnik and football, it's a very good combination and right down my alleyway. So it's one of my favorites.
Yeah, we did it for one season. For your listeners that don't know, it's like a comedy podcast with my friend Anthony. But we did it for one season at the NFL, and I've never been more afraid of getting fired, which was basically his intent. But we got away with it for like one season, and then they stopped it.
That would seem like the most Anthony Jeselnik thing in the world is how can I get my friend Greg fired from his job by being myself?
It was close. I remember a boss at the very end of that season just saying like, look, if this doesn't go well, they can't fire Anthony. He doesn't work here. It's me and you that are going to get fired. So that was that.
Very fun stuff. But yes, go watch JRVP on YouTube and listen to it where you get your podcast. It's a great podcast. But today we're heading into week 3 of the NFL preseason. Teams starting to cut down their rosters. And a team that is getting a lot of attention as of right now. The Pittsburgh Steelers, my Pittsburgh Steelers, getting a lot of attention after the game against Tampa Bay went really well. Calvin Austin's fast. Kenny Pickett looked good. George Pickens doing his thing. And then they come out fast against the Buffalo Bills. Jalen Warren running all over the place. Kenny Pickett dropping dimes to Pat Freiermuth. Your thoughts on the Steelers as a whole right now and what their ceiling could be?
I think their ceiling's high to answer right off the bat. Like their ceiling is they could win that division. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. They could win 12 games, something like that, if everything goes right. I do think that we have so little preseason action to go on now that we actually get a starter versus starter game for a quarter in Bills Steelers, and the Steelers look so good, and it combines with everything we've heard all offseason. I think, and we talked about this on Around the NFL, like I don't think any quarterbacks had more off-season hype of just people in person saying, man, he looks better. Like people I trust too, guys like Daniel Jeremiah, who I work with, but some of those crusty Steelers beat writers who aren't always like the most like pom-pom waving type of guys actually been saying like, no, really, he looks awesome. And then so to combine that with 3 perfect drives in the preseason where like no starters are playing and Jalen Warren's a good player, it's like the hype is going to get ramped up a little bit, but I'm kind of with it. I just happen to think that like it's hard to put them ahead of the Ravens and the Bengals. It's just a great division. So as good as I think the Steelers are, it's a loaded conference and it's a loaded division.
All right, so I've got a loaded rebuttal here too. One, I was at Steelers camp for a few days, and being a Steelers fan, I was very against the Kenny Pickett selection last year, and I was very vocal about being against the Kenny Pickett selection. And I'm one of those people now who are turning into pom-pom wavers saying he looks so much better, man. he looks much more poised, collected. His accuracy is much better. Very few balls hitting the ground during camp and during preseason so far. So that is promising. Obviously, the additions that they had in the offseason are very well documented with, trading for Allen Robinson, drafting Broderick Jones, drafting
but those
Darnell
two
Washington.
guys might not do anything. That's the funny thing, right? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's okay. Like the thing with Jones is weird because, we know that the athlete that he is at tackle and getting to the second level in terms of a run blocker, it's pass pro that people have been worried about. And it got better against Buffalo last week. He had a few bad reps against Tampa. He did allow a pressure against Buffalo. We'll see. I mean, they're going to be patient with him. They're going to be patient with Joey Porter Jr., but he looks good in his first preseason action. So I think time will tell, but the draft class of the Steelers has potential to be, I don't want to say an all-timer. That's a little bit hyperbolic, but could be really good.
Well, right. Last year's is the draft class that to me is going to make or break this team because Pickens seems like he maybe took a step up. Calvin Austin, you're going to get some contributions from. It looks like you found another pass rusher to jump into this year's class with Nate Herbig. And
I'm this close to getting Nick Herbig's face tattooed on my right ass cheek, man. I'm a big Nick Herbig guy. Oh, have we lost Gregg Rosenthal? All right. I've got Gregg Rosenthal back.
Sorry, I think I'm moving around too much. I don't know what happened to this place.
It's okay. Did you hear my comment about the ass cheek of Nick Herbig? Well, my ass cheek and Nick Herbig.
No, but that
I said
shirt
no.
was
I said
trenchant.
I said I'm this close to getting Nick Herbig's face tattooed on my right ass cheek because he's making me so happy as a Steelers fan watching him play.
It's crazy too because they have Highsmith,
They
long
just paid.
term, and Watt obviously long term, and so you don't even need him to be anything more than a third pass rusher or
Sure.
fourth pass rusher right now. It's the way to be. You have Hayward still in his prime. Like it is a really good looking front seven that I don't think probably outside of Pittsburgh hasn't gotten at enough attention, and that's
Yeah.
a big part of the reason why I think they could be really good.
And you pointed out Baltimore and Cincinnati. I don't think that they're a better. How do I say this? I think roster wise, head to toe, they stack up against Cincinnati. Obviously, the offense in Cincinnati is much more proven, and I would take them over Pittsburgh. But I think as a whole, the Bengals are a better team. They have a more difficult schedule, though. I think Pittsburgh has an easier route to getting to, winning the AFC North. That's been my bold take all offseason. I mean, we had our mutual friend Eric Edholm on, I think, in right after the draft, and I told him, "Hey, man, my bold prediction for the season is that the Steelers win the North." And I'm still sticking to that pretty heavily, especially after what we've seen. In terms of Baltimore, though, I'm glad you brought up the Ravens. I asked you to bring up a team that you might be lower on than the general consensus. I think the Ravens might be mine. I got questions about the new offense and whatnot. Are all of their top offensive talents going to stay healthy? I'm not going to bank on all of them staying healthy. Odell Beckham's got an injury history. Rashad Bateman, Lamar Jackson's missed the tail end of the last 2 seasons. J.K. Dobbins has an injury history. And now Marlon Humphrey dealing with injury issues. And their CB1 currently is Rock Ya-Sin. Nothing against Rock Ya-Sin, but if he's your number one corner when Marlon Humphrey's hurt, that's not exactly something that you want as a team. So Baltimore, I think I'm a little bit lower on than the general consensus.
I think they're a boomer bust team. They always finish strong, so it wouldn't shock me. I mean, I know that hasn't been the case the last 2 years, so I guess I'm thinking of older when Lamar was staying healthy. But they usually figure out their defense sort of as the season goes along. So I don't know what to think about their defense because they were playing, incredible late last season. They really outplayed the Bengals. Certainly the Ravens defense handed it to the Bengals offense in that playoff game. And you think of what Mike McDonald got going schematically, but then you look at the cornerback room. You just mentioned it. I mean, Ya-Sin's hurt too. They've had a ton of injuries, and they're also thin at edge rusher too. They're counting on Odafe Owe to get better, David Ajabo to get better. We'll see. They signed Clowney. They just seem like if everything goes right, they could be amazing, and it could take a while in a new system. We also haven't seen Todd Monken be incredibly successful at the NFL level either.
Right.
But I'm always going to believe in Lamar and John Harbaugh to kind of figure it out as they go.
That's the thing. As long as Lamar's healthy and they've got Harbaugh, who's going to get the best out of all of them, I do have a hard time saying they're going to be terrible. But in terms of could I see them, going 9-8 and being the first team out of the playoffs? Yeah. I don't know. What about you? What's a team that you might be lower on than?
I hope this counts because it's not like it's a Super Bowl favorite, but I'm gonna go Jaguars. I am always a little suspicious about the team that ends really well, that people just assume the second half of the season is way more important than the first half of the season, and that's gonna carry over. Number one. Number two, the defense, to me, they didn't do anything this offseason. I know they spent a lot the season before, and it's not a good defense. It was not great coaching on defense. They're really thin in terms of their pass rush. I'm not really in love with their secondary. Just the defense as a whole, if you told me that could be a bottom 5 defense, I don't think that's crazy. So then you're talking about a bottom 5 defense and a lot of questions on your offensive line. They drafted Anton Harrison to be their right tackle. He's been in and out of camp with injuries. Cam Robinson is suspended. You have Walker Little.
Right.
I'm not. It's not an anti-Lawrence take here. It's just like, would it like? I just don't totally trust the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Did I lose Greg again?
Sorry, this never happens. But I'm taping on my end, so next time I'm just talking through it, so you'll never know.
That's fine. That's fine. No, I hear you about their defense, especially their secondary. Like I like Andre Cisco a lot, but outside of him, man, like their Rayshawn Jenkins is a dog, and he can be in my locker room anytime that he wants. He's not exactly who I want starting and at safety. So I hear you on that. I'm actually pulling up, just out of curiosity, where their defense finished last year in terms of like total yards. Um, let me see. Let me see.
They gave Justin Herbert enough trouble in that game.
They sure did.
I do have to admit.
The 23rd. So they weren't a great defense last year in terms of total yards. And, you know, they did have moments like the Dallas game was a weird game that they probably shouldn't have won that they did. The Baltimore game, Lawrence just went out of his mind in the fourth quarter. I'm not discrediting them or anything like that. I am high on Jacksonville simply because they play in a division that's going to be not great this year. And I think that there's going to be a lot of easy wins there. In terms of Lawrence, I'm with you on not being anti-Lawrence. I think he's going to be my MVP pick this year.
Whoa. I wouldn't go that far. I'm not anti-Lawrence, but I guess I'm a little less high.
Push back a little bit.
Then consensus, just because I see what Justin Herbert was when he came into the league, and Burrow and Lamar, and the guys that I consider the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the league. And I know Trevor Lawrence had Urban Meyer, and then last year a little bit, but it's not the same. Like, so I'm not going to put him there yet until he stacks another season like that. And like, I just don't feel like you have to like just immediately assume and elevate based on what he did in college, which you would assume he gets there. But I guess I need to see it one more time all the way through for 17 straight games. Like, that's the best way to evaluate a guy. And to me, he hasn't been as natural, as consistent as a passer. And then he obviously doesn't have like the running ability that makes up for it, like a Lamar or a Jalen Hurts right now.
That's how I feel about Tua Tagovailoa. I think, you know, the way that you feel about Trevor is kind of where I'm at with Tua. I don't know how you feel about Tua. I think that, you know, there's that weird argument that happens on Twitter, you know, between Chargers fans and Dolphins fans about Herbert or Tua, and it's going to be a hellscape week one when those two teams play each other, one way or the other. I think that's kind of where I'm at with Tua. Is okay, probably more efficient than most quarterbacks are, but in terms of, you know, game-changing arm talent, you know, obviously Herbert and Mahomes, Allen, you know, he's not quite at that level. What are your expectations for Miami?
If Tua stays healthy, I'm not worried about him. You can't really separate him and McDaniel, so to me it doesn't matter because I think he's just a great fit in that system. Like, he is elite at getting the ball out quickly, timing, accuracy on short stuff. Like, he's one of the best quick game guys in the league, I would say already. I don't feel like I need to see more on that, and that's what he's going to be asked to do. And he has some limitations, and no one's even putting him, I don't think, and I wouldn't, in Lawrence's class as like a guy that could be a top 5 overall quarterback he would start a franchise with. But that's a big if, him staying healthy, and they haven't had a good month. They lost Ramsey. Teron Armstead's going to start the season already iffy. Certainly offensive line questions. Like, a new defensive system, I think that'll be a good thing ultimately, but there could be some growing pains there. But offensively, I'm not that worried. Although if you listen to the Dolphins beat writers, they've said it's been kind of a weird camp, that they haven't been all systems firing in camp.
Yeah, talking to my boss over at USA Today, Doug Farrar, I mean, he's lower than the Dolphins than most. He said, you know, you can see them winning only 6 or 7 games. Yeah, so shout out Doug. We'll see what everybody says about that. Yeah, man, like, that entire division is one of those, like, until Buffalo gets dethroned, I'm gonna put them up there, especially with that quarterback. The Jets are gonna be so so many eyes on them for obvious reasons. What are your thoughts on them as a whole at the moment? I think that for them, what, let me phrase it this way. What would be a successful season for the Jets? I mean, is it Super Bowl or bust, or is it, okay, they got to the AFC title game. That's a good first step with Rodgers.
Oh, that would be great. I think if they won a playoff game, I mean, if you've ever listened to the Around the NFL podcast, our host is a Jets fan, Dan Hansis, and I think Jets fans would take that right now. Obviously, it would hurt when they lose that game, but they just look, they're relevant, they're exciting. If they won 11 games and won a playoff game, I mean, they haven't been to the playoffs in however many years. What is it, 12, 13, the longest of any NFL team. So I think even making the playoffs, they would take it just because Jets fans are so conditioned for things to go poorly that I think there's still part of them that could see like a 9-8 season, an 8-9 season, and this falling apart. I expect their defense to be great. I don't know if the offense will be firing on all cylinders, but it is kind of hard to imagine them not winning 10 games. But you could say that about the Dolphins too, and you could say that about the Bills, and someone's going to end up being a disappointment, especially because I'm not totally giving up on the Patriots.
Oh goodness. You're a Patriots guy though, aren't you?
Yes. But I kind of think they've always done better in the years. Belichick's always done better in the years there's lower expectations. Those are all their best seasons, even including 2021, I would say, which, they made the playoffs, which was a surprise. And he's got
that was such a weird season though, man.
Absolutely. But he talked about it, and I thought this was telling this offseason, like as if they were restarting their program when Brady left, and now it's like year 4 of that program or year 3 of that program. I think if you look at their defense, he and the Patriots are confident in what they have defensively. I think they've built it to what they want in terms of versatility, talent, continuity. That they could be wrong, and it's not a defensive league, but I think they have a top 3 defense, top 3 to 5 defense, and we'll see. But when it wouldn't totally stun me, and if you have that, then they'll be in every game or most games.
I talked about this today on a radio spot, and I wrote it in my power rankings for USA Today. Go read those if you haven't yet, by the way, everybody. And I was trying to think of like the perfect analogy for the Patriots as a whole, and just how bland I think that offense is going to be. And what I dialed it down to was like plain Cheerios, not the Honey Nut Cheerios, but like the cardboard flavored Cheerios without any milk. I think that's the Patriots offense right now. Like they've got a limited quarterback. They keep paying for receivers that aren't really worth the money. They just give a bunch of money to Devontae Parker. They give a bunch of money to Nelson Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne a few years ago. Like you bring in Zeke, that's great. Like it's going to be very run heavy with Ramondre Stevenson and Zeke, relying on the underneath passing game. It's going to be a very boring team to watch offensively. Bill O'Brien can make a difference, but I mean that's not much of a bar to raise when you had Patricia and Judge there last year in terms of what they contributed, or I guess didn't, from an offensive mind standpoint. I just don't see any sort of flair in that offense.
Sure, but that like plain Cheerios will like fill you up, whereas last year it's like they were just taking like methamphetamine before every game. It's like anything is a huge upgrade. I mean, Mac Jones played pretty well as a rookie for a rookie, and if you just got him back to that, it's like you'll take it. I think Bill Belichick's route this year is like, give us the 20th best offense in the league, the 15th best offense in this defense, and my coaching, and we'll see what happens.
It does feel like Belichick's gone back to like his Giants days, right? Where he's just like, I'm just going to play the hell. Like, I'm just going to try to limit teams to points and play a hell of a good defense. Like, I love the NFL really let Belichick trade down and still get Christian Gonzalez, which really annoyed me, by the way. Yep. I think he's gonna be a great fit in that scheme. Matt Judon's a really good edge rusher as well. Defense is going to be good, and they, just because they have Belichick, they're still going to be relevant. They'll still have at least 7 wins, somewhere in that neighborhood. He'll probably give them at least 1 or 2 more. In terms of teams that like I'm excited to watch, though, man, they're going to be. I'm not going to like be on the edge of my seat, be like, oh man, I can't wait to watch Patriots and Texans or whomever the hell they play. They play what? Philadelphia week 1?
Yeah, they got Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. They're probably getting a beat down from the Eagles. But you never know. Get excited. Pop Douglas, Demario Douglas, 6th round pick here. Their slot receiver. It's the return of Kendrick Bourne. No, they're not going to be exciting if you're into offensive football. Defensively, I think they.
Okay, you're back. This is on the fly podcasting and journalism, ladies and gentlemen, where Greg and I are just trying to get through this at this point.
Yeah, I apologize. It never happens.
Nobody,
I
it's
don't, I
okay.
don't know what happened today.
It's
I'm blaming it on the hurricane and tropical storms messing with our
you know
internet.
what? That is a very very valid thing to blame. And speaking of just horrendous storms, Russell Wilson. Do you have any sort of confidence in the Broncos this year?
No, I do think he looked faster. I found it interesting. Sean Payton really has been talking him up over the last week that he's making strides. He hasn't looked great in terms of being on time in terms of his preseason games and his drop back
Yeah.
passing. Hasn't been a disaster either. Sean Payton probably buys you a couple of wins. They have defensive talent, but I think there's too many different pieces. It feels like a growing pains sort of first year with Peyton, and I'm not sure if Wilson's back next year. But I think it's pretty telling. Wilson's feels like he's barely talking to the media. He's
Oh
lost
yeah.
weight. Like he knows this is sort of his NFL future, and this is his chance to bounce back.
Ugh. Yeah. I've never seen such a fall from grace at such a prominent position. Like I can't think of one that comes to mind in like any sport really. Somebody who's like without a doubt in the elite of their position group. They go to a new team, everybody's excited, and they just suck.
Yeah, you would have to go to Tiger Woods crashing that
Yeah,
golf
that was a
cart.
time. Yeah, that was certainly a
I
time to
mean,
be alive.
Russell Wilson, I disagree because on some level because to me he was pretty overrated by the end of his Seattle days. On our podcast I got in trouble because I was like I would take before he was on the Broncos I was like I would take Mac Jones long term going against Russell Wilson. Like I would not put Russell Wilson in the top half of the league in terms of quarterbacks I wanted long term moving forward, and that take has aged well. The Mac Jones part of it has not, unfortunately. But he was already in decline, and he's just a guy that he's aging like everyone expected Ben Roethlisberger to age. When Ben Roethlisberger was in his mid-20s, everyone was like, "Well, this is great for now, but it's not going to work out well." And then when he got to about 30, 31, 32, he really started mastering the mental side of the game too, and it matched up, and he ended up having a great long career. But that's sort of what's happened to Russell Wilson.
As a Steelers fan, man, I was very happy with that. So I can't complain at all. Shout out Ben Roethlisberger.
I
For sure
always said he was weirdly underrated because kind of like Tom Brady, that by far the best part of his career was when he was not winning Super Bowls.
Yeah.
He was not Ben Roethlisberger was not a top 5 quarterback till he was done winning Super Bowls, but then he was a top 5 quarterback for 5 years when they weren't winning a lot of playoff games.
Led the NFL in passing yards twice in that span.
There you go.
What a guy. I feel like I had something else to add to that, and then it totally went over my head. I don't know, man.
Say it next time my computer freezes. Just
Yeah,
keep
no,
talking that time because it does come back in 15 seconds.
it will come back to me. I'm trying to think of what it was. That's really going to piss me off now. Oh well. Oh no, the Tiger Woods thing. I do remember it. I don't know if you're a South Park guy or not, but at that time, they made an episode where the guys, the kids, get the new PGA Tour game, and it involves his now ex-wife chasing him around with a golf club as the first level of the game. It's funny. Good South Park humor.
Yeah, I feel bad putting Russell Wilson in that category because all he did was go from being the 13th best quarterback in the league to the 28th, which is it happens sometimes. It happens.
I mean, that last year in Seattle where he got hurt, I'll listen to you on, but 2020 Russell Wilson, I thought was near the top of that game against New England with Cam Newton and week 3 on Sunday Night Football. I gambled on that game very heavily, and I bet Seattle, and I was shitting my pants on that last drive, thinking that I was going to lose a lot of money as a college junior, not knowing how I was going to pay rent that month.
Damn,
but
you're
it
young.
came through.
I didn't know that. Yeah, sure. That was when everyone started talking about like Russell Wilson has never gotten an MVP vote. But about halfway through that season,
I think that's when the let Russ cook thing started.
right. Halfway through that season, the floor kind of fell out, and you know who
That was
has
horrible.
gotten an MVP vote since?
Yes. All right. So now we're going to transition to this new segment that I've got. I don't know how it's going to go, Gregg Rosenthal, but you're going to be my guinea pig for it. I think it's going to go great. This is hot take or not take. I even got a talk track for it and everything. This is a professional show here on the Believe Podcast Network, ladies and gentlemen. So how this goes, Gregg Rosenthal, I'm going to give you a take. You're going to tell me if it's a hot take, no way in hell it's going to happen, or if it's not a take at all and you think that it's got a good shot at happening. Sound good? Okay. Hot take or not take. The Seattle Seahawks will finish with a better record than the San Francisco 49ers.
Ooh. That's a hot take. How could it not be a hot take? But I'm with it. I'm feeling it.
Because who's going to be the 49ers quarterback? Is it going to be the now bionic arm of Brock Purdy? Is it going to be Sam Darnold? Or is it going to be Kyle Shanahan's apparently like get away from me Trey Lance?
Also, like one of these years, their offensive line and their cornerback group, which never looks good before the season, is actually not going to be good. So we'll see. I think this might be the year.
I think that might be, when I do my game-by-game picks and all the division stuff you say today, I think that might be one of the shockers, is Seattle winning the NFC West over the 49ers. Roster-wise, they're great, but in terms of Seattle got a lot better this offseason. 49ers have no idea who they want at quarterback or what it's going to be throughout the season. I don't know. I think that uncertainty will finally catch up to them.
I mean, I think they know they want Purdy. We'll see if he can do it for 17 weeks. I am a little anxious about any team that keeps getting close and like anything but winning the Super Bowl is going to be a disappointment. It's hard to keep getting back there.
All right. Hot take or not take. This is from Bussin' with the Boys comedian Chris DiStefano saying that men in jerseys is a weird thing. Hot take or not take? Men in jerseys are a weird thing.
I think that's a hot take. I feel the same way. I'm not really a jersey guy. I get it. You wear it to a game, but that's it. That's all. That's all.
I can agree to an extent. I think it's a little bit weird if there's like a 60-year-old guy wearing the jersey of like a 24-year-old. But if my dad wears like a Terry Bradshaw jersey, that's fine. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Like if they're older than you, that's fine.
I was gonna say, yeah, I'm closer to being 60 than I am to your age, so maybe.
No, you're not.
It's close. Yeah, I've never been a jersey guy. There's something like just walking around in a jersey. I'm with that. That's a hot take. I kind of agree.
Okay.
For kids.
I'll give you for kids. Okay, I'll give you that one. All right. This one is specifically for you and Jesselnick because in prep for this, I was catching up on the JRVP show. And I've never felt so seen by somebody because Gregg Rosenthal, I also like biting off my fingernail and putting it between my two front teeth.
Why are you mentioning this? Yeah, okay.
Because I wanted that to be in the show more than you have any idea about. Hot take or not take, that is the grossest thing that somebody can do with just any part of like their own body, like in a casual.
Oh no, that's a not take. I mean, you could come up with some other grosser things to do with your body part. But yeah, my wife has been disgusted by that for years, and the fact that I brought that up on the show, I told her, she was like, "Why would you ever let other people know that?" But it's just very satisfying. So if you haven't done it, give it a shot. Yeah.
Love it. All right. Hot take or not take, the Green Bay Packers will finish with a better record than the Chicago Bears.
Well, if I agree, it's a hot take.
If you agree, it's a not take. If you disagree, then it's a hot take.
That's a confusing system. Then I guess it's a not take. I'm in. We did over-unders on our show this last week with Bill Barnwell, and I took under Bears 7.5.
Okay.
And so this is a little more anti-Bears than it is pro-Packers, but I think the Packers have a lot of good players, and I kind of trust their infrastructure with LaFleur to figure out their offense well enough. And I just think the Bears, like, the roster is not that talented. It's like DJ.
It's a weirdly constructed roster. I stuck with you that time. I stuck with you. It was a little bit in and out, but I heard you. It is a very oddly constructed roster in Chicago where they spend a lot of money on off-ball linebackers. I think I'm higher on Tremaine Edmonds than the consensus. I think TJ Edwards is a good player. They have no edge rushers. Like, yeah, you're bringing Yannick Ngakoue, but like, I don't know, man. I've got questions. I like their secondary, but I
like their secondary. I like a lot of their players. I just don't think high-end talent. I think if you're stacking it, them versus the rest of the league, I still think they're like a bottom 10 roster in terms of talent. And Edmonds, people always rate free agents on the year before. Like, he had a really up and down career, and he has not practiced at all this month, and that's pretty typical of his career, where he's kind of off and on the field. And a lot of times in Buffalo, that, like, when that happened in August, he would have a pretty bad season.
Hot take or not take, the Carolina Panthers win the NFC South.
That's a hot take. I'm not with that at all. I think the
not with that at all.
Falcons and Saints, I guess, are the consensus picks, but to me, they really are kind of a tier above both of them over Panthers and Bucks.
I like the Falcons roster. I don't love their quarterback. I like the Saints quarterback. I don't love their roster or their head coach. I think Frank Reich kind of gets a bad rep. What are your thoughts on Frank Reich?
I do like Frank Reich a lot. I think he's the right coach for Young.
You bring over Ejiro Evero as well?
Sure. I don't mind the coaching staff. I just think it's a transition year. The offensive line played well last year, but now it's a new system. Like Ikongwu, we'll see. They have injuries. They had coming off injuries at guard. Like, they're just asking a lot for Bryce Young and a lot of transition. And, your best player on defense, Brian Burns, coming off a serious injury, and J.C. Horn struggled to stay on the field. I think it's asking a lot. I think the Saints and the Falcons are kind of further along in their process.
All right, last one, hot take or not take. The Houston Texans and C.J. Stroud will finish with a better record than Anthony Richardson and the Indianapolis Colts. Hot take or not take?
Wait, so if I agree...
If you agree, it's a not take. Because if you disagree with something, you're like, oh, man, that's a hot take.
Right there doesn't, agreeing and then it's a not take... That's a tough one. I kind of see them about the same.
Question the entire structure of this.
I'm going not take because I think the Texans' defense is the group out of the 4 units on those 2 teams that actually I'm the highest on. And DeMeco Ryans I'm high on. I'm excited to watch Richardson more than I am to watch Stroud. But I think the Colts could be bad on both sides of the ball, whereas I think the Texans could sneaky have a good offensive line and sneaky have a good defense. So that in a bad division, I think they could find their way to being deep, to getting their over, whatever that is, at least.
I think their over is like over under 6.5. And quietly, you can make the argument that the Texans have like the most slept on roster as a whole in the league. You pointed out they got 2 really good tackles and Tunsil and Howard. Yeah, Jalen Petrie, Jimmy Ward comes over from San Francisco with DeMeco Ryan. Derek Stingley, when he was healthy, was pretty solid last year. Will Anderson's looked good. The only thing I do question is like the fact that you and I could start at receiver for them. Like, Tank Dell's been fun in the preseason, but like I don't know how I feel about like Nico Collins, and I don't know if I can name another Texans receiver outside of those 2 right now.
Yeah, they're a team where I'm trying not to overreact to the preseason. Stroud has played 5 drives, 3 points, a lot of 3 and outs, maybe 6 drives, and it just looked jagged. It's a first-time offensive coordinator, too. So I think he'll face a lot of pressure, especially early. They did lose their center for the season, and Titus Howard is out for a little while. And
that's hot take or not take, which apparently I have to think of a name change for because Gregg Rosenthal is pointing out the flaws in it. No, so let me try again to explain this. If somebody says something and you don't necessarily agree with the take, it's like, oh man, hot take coming.
Okay.
So I feel like that's where, if it's more obvious that it could happen, then it's not really a take. It's just, oh yeah, that makes sense.
That part makes sense. The not take to agree with it, then I don't know. Sorry.
I'm
Sorry,
sorry.
Jarrett.
This is a lot of fun to do this with you. I mean, you're a guy whose stuff I've admired for a long time, so it's been cool to be able to do this with you. What have you got coming in terms of your personal work that you would like to go ahead and talk about real quick? That was the worst possible time that anything like that could have happened. It's like I set it up like a volleyball spike.
I was hoping we could get to the end of this. I apologize, Jarrett, for my total lack of professionalism. I don't know why it caught me today, but it did.
I'm gonna go with your valid point on the weather in California, but specifically in Los Angeles, with it
Maybe, but
being,
what would that
all
have to
this.
do with internet speed? It was fine earlier today.
Well,
But
I mean,
that's my bad.
did you ever have Dish Network or DirecTV? If it drizzled, your reception would be shitty.
There you go. Yeah.
So I'm gonna chalk it up to lingering effects of tropical storms in the Southern California area for any sort of issues that we've had today.
Appreciate it. It was fun, Jarrett.
But was there anything you wanted to talk about, plug before I let you go?
No. Check out the Around the NFL podcast. We're cranking along. I think 3 or 4 shows a week right now.
And the Justin Beck and Rosenthal Vanity Project.
That's right. That's weekly. That's amazingly continuing, and hopefully will help pay for my kids to go to college someday. So there we go.
Amen to that. Gregg Rosenthal, it's been a lot of fun, buddy.
Thanks, Jarrett.
All right.